As the county sheriff, my perspective on our neighborhood is multifaceted. It's not just my home, it's my jurisdiction, a place I'm sworn to protect. From a professional standpoint, the tranquility of our streets represents the successful fulfillment of my duty. The low crime rate, the absence of major incidents, and the general sense of order are indicators of a well-maintained community. I see children riding their bikes, elderly couples strolling hand in hand, and I feel a sense of accomplishment. This isn't just a pleasant neighborhood, it's a safe one, and that's partly my responsibility. I take pride in knowing the residents feel secure. But I'm also a resident, a neighbor. From a personal perspective, I value the same things as everyone else: the peace, the quiet, the sense of community. I chose to live here for the same reasons they did. I wave to my neighbors while mowing the lawn, chat with them at the corner store, and participate in the neighborhood watch. I'm invested in maintaining this quality of life, not just as a sheriff, but as someone who calls this place home. This dual role creates a unique blend of professional obligation and personal investment. From a legal perspective, I'm constantly aware of the laws that govern our community. Even when off duty, I notice the speed limit signs, the crosswalks, the stop signs, not just as visual cues, but as representations of the order I'm tasked with upholding. I see the potential for violations, the vulnerabilities in our seemingly perfect system. This awareness is always present, a subtle undercurrent to my daily life. When Clara moved into the neighborhood, my perspective shifted. Initially, from a neighborly perspective, I saw her as a potential disruption, someone who might not understand our unwritten rules. Her ostentatious house, with its modern architecture and bold colors, stood out like a sore thumb. Her flashy red sports car, a sleek Ferrari, roared through the quiet streets, raising more than a few eyebrows. It wasn't just the car. It was the way she carried herself, confident, almost arrogant, as if the rules didn't apply to her. I hoped she'd integrate, that she'd appreciate the values we held dear. But I was also wary. From a psychological perspective, I'm trained to observe behavior, or to look for patterns, to anticipate potential problems. Clara's initial actions, the way she sped down Elm Street, the way she barely acknowledged her neighbors' raised concerns. There was a certain disregard, a lack of awareness, that hinted at a potential for conflict. I wasn't jumping to conclusions, but I was filing away these observations, building a mental profile. From a conflict perspective, I recognized that Clara's presence introduced a potential for disruption. The contrast between her lifestyle and the established norms of the neighborhood was stark. It wasn't just about the car. It was about a fundamental difference in values. This wasn't necessarily a problem yet, but it was a potential fault line, a point of friction that could escalate. I saw the possibility of future clashes, not just between Clara and her neighbors, but between Clara and the law. As the sheriff, I was in a unique position. I had to balance my personal desire for peace with my professional obligation to maintain order. I had to be both a neighbor and a law enforcement officer. And as Clara's behavior began to unfold, I knew that this delicate balance would be increasingly tested. My initial observations weren't just casual. They were the foundation for the decisions I would have to make in the coming weeks and months. I was, in essence, watching the cracks appear in the facade of our peaceful neighborhood, and I knew it was my duty to prevent those cracks from widening. The subtle unease I felt upon Clara's arrival quickly solidified into a tangible problem. It started with a few complaints here and there at the neighborhood association meetings, whispers about a red blur speeding down Elm Street. But the whispers soon turned into concerned voices, and the isolated incidents became a pattern. My dual role as both neighbor and sheriff became increasingly strained. The cracks I'd observe in the facade of our peaceful neighborhood were widening. From a legal perspective, each reported incident, a near miss with a child on a bike, a blatant disregard for a stop sign, a complaint about excessive speed, was a potential violation. I started keeping a mental log, a growing list of infractions that individually might seem minor, but collectively painted a picture of reckless endangerment. I knew I couldn't officially intervene while off duty, but the sheriff in me was itching to act. From a community perspective, the tension was palpable. Parents were becoming increasingly anxious, restricting their children's outdoor playtime. The friendly waves exchanged between neighbors were now tinged with worry. The sense of security that had defined our neighborhood was eroding, replaced by a constant undercurrent of fear. One morning, Mrs. Henderson, a sweet elderly woman who lived across the street from me, approached me, her voice trembling slightly. "Sheriff," she said, "I saw that red car again. It nearly hit little Timmy Johnson as he was crossing the street to get to the school bus." She didn't even slow down. "I'll look into it, Mrs. Henderson," I reassured her, trying to project calm authority even though my own frustration was building. This wasn't just a legal issue anymore. It was a personal one. These were my neighbors, my friends, and their safety was being threatened. From a personal perspective, I felt torn. I tried the neighborly approach first. One evening, I caught Clara as she was getting out of her Ferrari. "Hey, Clara," I said casually, trying to keep my tone neutral. "We've had a few reports of speeding in the neighborhood. Just wanted to remind you to be mindful of the speed limit. Lots of kids around." She looked at me, her expression a mixture of annoyance and disdain. "I know how to drive," she retorted, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "It's not a highway. Relax. Besides, I'm always in a hurry." "Being in a hurry doesn't justify endangering others, Clara," I said, my voice hardening slightly. "This is a residential area. People live here. Children play here." She rolled her eyes. "Everyone's making such a big deal out of nothing. I'm a good driver." She then slammed her car door and walked away, leaving me standing there, fuming. The neighborly approach had failed miserably. From a psychological perspective, I started to analyze Clara's behavior, or more critically, her defensiveness, her refusal to acknowledge any wrongdoing, her constant excuse of being in a hurry. It all pointed to a deep-seated sense of entitlement and a complete lack of empathy. She wasn't just a bad driver, she was a danger. The situation escalated. More complaints poured in. Near misses became more frequent. The neighborhood association sent her official warnings, which she ignored. Some residents resorted to shouting at her as she sped past a desperate attempt to get through to her. One afternoon, I was washing my car in my driveway when I witnessed it myself. Clara's Ferrari roared down the street, ignoring a stop sign completely. A young boy on a bicycle, luckily, saw her at the last minute and swerved, narrowly avoiding a collision. The boy's mother, who had been watching from across the street, screamed. I threw down my sponge, my patience finally snapping. "That's it," I muttered to myself. This wasn't just a neighborly dispute anymore. This was a clear and present danger. From a professional perspective, I knew I had to act. The line between neighbor and sheriff had blurred, and my duty was clear. I couldn't wait for a tragedy to happen. The next morning, I put on my uniform, got into my patrol car, and waited. The transition from concerned neighbor to law enforcement officer was complete. The time for gentle warnings was over. It was time to uphold the law and protect my community, even if it meant confronting one of its own. The seed of doubt planted in the introduction had now fully bloomed into a full-scale crisis. The careful balance I'd strived to maintain was shattered, and I was now squarely in the role of enforcer, role I had hoped to avoid, but one that Clara's actions had made unavoidable. The confrontation was the turning point. My actions of flashing lights, the siren, the firm but professional demeanor were calculated to convey the seriousness of the situation. But it was the aftermath, the internal and external consequences Clara faced, that truly shaped the resolution. After I issued the citation and Clara had her unfortunate incident with a locked car, I returned to my patrol car, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and unease. Justice had been served, legally speaking. The citation listed 3 violations: speeding 25 miles per hour over the limit, failure to stop a stop sign, and, most seriously, failure to stop for a school bus. The total fine was due law $750, a significant sum, especially considering the potential for increased insurance premiums. But money wasn't the real issue, was it? It was about Clara's internal state. I could only imagine the turmoil. She was experiencing the shock of being pulled over, the humiliation in front of her neighbors, the fear of further legal trouble, and then the sheer absurdity of locking herself out of her own car. It was a perfect storm of consequences. A few days later, I saw her at the local grocery store. I braced myself for another confrontation, but it never came. She saw me, and for a moment, our eyes met. There was no defiance in her gaze, no anger. Instead, I saw something that looked a lot like shame. I approached her cautiously. "Clara," I said, keeping my voice neutral. She flinched slightly, then looked down at her shopping cart. "Sheriff," she mumbled, her voice barely audible. "How are you doing?" I asked, genuinely curious. She shrugged, avoiding eye contact. "Fine. I paid the ticket." "I know," I said. "Look, I'm not here to lecture you. I wanted to see how you were." She finally looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes. "It was a lot," she admitted, her voice still quiet. "The fine, everything. It was meant to be a wake-up call, Clara," I said gently. "Not a punishment, but a reminder of the responsibilities we all have to each other." She nodded slowly. I guess I didn't realize how much my DRIVYing, how it affected people. "It's not just about following the rules," I explained. "It's about safety, about respecting the community you live in." A long silence followed. Then Clara said, her voice barely a whisper, I was being selfish. I know that now." That admission, however small, was significant. It wasn't a dramatic apology, not a grand gesture of remorse, but it was a start. It was a crack in the wall of entitlement she'd built around herself. From that point on, the overcorrection in Clara's DRIVYing became a source of neighborhood amusement, but it was also a constant reminder of the change she'd undergone. The DULA 750 fine, the public humiliation, the quiet conversation in the grocery store, these were all elements of a resolution that was far more complex than a simple legal transaction. It was about the internal shift, the slow, often awkward process of recognizing one's flaws and attempting to make amends. The resolution wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was a testament to the power of consequences, the potential for change, and the enduring importance of community responsibility. The dialogue, though brief, revealed a crucial step in Clara's journey, the beginning of acknowledging her wrongdoing and the impact it had on others. This internal reckoning, more than the fine itself, was the true price of her change. The story at its core is a microcosm of how societies function. Rules, both formal laws and informal social norms, exist to maintain order and protect the well-being of the collective. Clara's initial disregard for these rules represented a challenge to that order, a threat to the shared sense of security. Her actions, while seemingly minor in isolation, had a ripple effect, creating fear and eroding trust. The community's response, the initial warnings, the escalating frustration, and finally the intervention of law enforcement highlights the importance of collective action. Individuals, feeling powerless on their own, found strength in numbers. The neighborhood association, the concerned parents, the whispering neighbors, they all played a role in holding Clara accountable. This underscores a crucial lesson. A healthy community requires active participation and a willingness to speak up against wrongdoing. Silence in the face of injustice can be as damaging as the injustice itself. Clara's eventual transformation, however imperfect, demonstrates the potential for human change, even in seemingly entrenched patterns of behavior. Or, while her motivation might have been a complex mix of shame, fear, and a genuine desire for redemption, the outcome was positive. This offers a message of hope, a reminder that people are not static entities. They can learn, they can adapt, and they can choose to do better. The story doesn't present a fairy tale ending of perfect reconciliation, but it offers something more realistic, the possibility of growth, even after significant mistakes. The concluding message is not simply obey the law. It's a more nuanced call for empathy, responsibility, and a recognition of our interconnectedness. Clara's journey is a cautionary tale, but also a testament to the resilience of community and the enduring human capacity for change. It reminds us that our actions have consequences, that our choices impact those around us, and that true belonging requires a commitment to the well-being of the whole. The seemingly isolated incident of reckless driving ultimately served as a catalyst for a deeper understanding of these fundamental principles, leaving a lasting impact, not just on Clara, but on the entire neighborhood. It is a lesson that extends far beyond the confines of a quiet suburban street, resonating with anyone who has ever navigated the complexities of living in a shared social space. The resolution is a circle completed, returning the neighborhood to peace, but a peace now enriched by experience. This expanded version of the story delves deeper into the characters' motivations, the community's response, and the broader implications of Clara's actions. It adds new layers of conflict, emotional depth, and a more nuanced exploration of the themes of responsibility, change, and community. Certainly, below is the continuation and conclusion of the story, expanding on the themes of community, personal growth, and a lasting impact of Clara's transformation. The narrative builds on the existing plot, while introducing new elements to deepen the emotional resonance and provide a satisfying resolution. Clara's overcorrection in her driving habits became a running joke in the neighborhood. She now drove so cautiously that she often caused minor traffic jams, her Ferrari crawling along at a snail's pace. At first, the neighbors found it amusing, but over time, it became a symbol of her genuine effort to change. The once flashy car, now a symbol of restraint, was a constant reminder of the lessons learned. But the impact of Clara's transformation went beyond her driving. The neighborhood, once fractured by her reckless behavior, began to heal. The parents who had been afraid to let their children play outside slowly regained their trust. The elderly couples resumed their evening strolls, and the children returned to their bikes and games. The sense of security that had been eroded was slowly restored, but it was a different kind of peace, one that had been tested and strengthened by adversity. One evening, as I was walking my dog, I saw Clara sitting on her porch, sipping a cup of tea. She waved me over, and I hesitated for a moment before joining her. The tension between us had eased, but there was still an unspoken understanding that things between us would never be the same. "Sheriff," she said, gesturing to the empty chair beside her. "Care to join me?" I nodded and sat down, my dog curling up at my feet. For a few moments, we sat in silence, watching the sun set over the quiet street. Finally, Clara spoke. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened," she said, her voice soft. "About how my actions affected everyone. I didn't realize how much damage I was causing." "It's not easy to admit when we're wrong," I replied. "But it's the first step toward making things right." She nodded, her eyes distant. "I've been trying to make amends. I've started volunteering at the community center, helping with the after-school program. It's not much, but it's something." I was surprised by her admission. The community center had been struggling for years, and the after-school program was always in need of volunteers. Clara's involvement was a small but meaningful gesture, one that showed she was serious about changing. "That's great, Clara," I said sincerely. "It's not easy to step up like that. The kids will appreciate it." She smiled faintly, but there was a sadness in her eyes. "I just wish I'd realized sooner how much my actions mattered. I was so focused on myself that I didn't see the bigger picture." "We all make mistakes," I said. "What matters is what we do after." Clara's efforts didn't go unnoticed. The neighbors, who had once viewed her with suspicion and anger, began to see her in a new light. Mrs. Henderson, the elderly woman who had first brought Clara's speeding to my attention, was one of the first to extend an olive branch. "I saw Clara at the community center yesterday," she told me one morning. "She was helping the kids with their homework. It's nice to see her trying to make a difference." Others followed suit, offering Clara small gestures of kindness, a wave, a smile, a friendly word. It wasn't an overnight transformation, but over time, the walls between Clara and the community began to crumble. But change is never easy, and Clara's journey was no exception. One afternoon, as she was leaving the community center, she was confronted by Mr. Thompson, a gruff man who had been one of her most vocal critics. You think a few hours of volunteering makes up for what you did? Clara froze, her face pale. For a moment, it seemed like she might retreat into her old defensive shell. But then she took a deep breath and met his gaze. I know I can't undo what I did, she said quietly. But I'm trying to do better. That's all I can do. Mister. Thompson stared at her for a long moment, then nodded curtly and walked away. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. The true test of Clara's transformation came a few weeks later. A new family moved into the neighborhood, and their teenage son, Jake, quickly gained a reputation for reckless behavior. He rode his skateboard through the streets at breakneck speed, ignored traffic signs, and even egged a few houses as a prank. The neighbors were furious, and the tension in the community began to rise once again. But this time, Clara stepped up. I'll talk to him, she told me one evening. I know what it's like to be in his shoes. I was skeptical, but agreed to let her try. The next day, Clara approached Jake as he was skateboarding down Elm Street. Hey, she said, her voice calm but firm. Can we talk? Jake rolled his eyes, but stopped. What do you want? I used to be like you, Clara said. I thought the rules didn't apply to me, but I learned the hard way that they do, and I don't want you to make the same mistakes I did. Jake hesitated, his defiance wavering. Why do you care? Because I've been where you are, Clara replied. And I know how it feels to be the one causing trouble. But I also know how it feels to lose the trust of the people around you. It's not worth it. Jake didn't respond immediately, but over the next few weeks, his behavior began to change. He still skateboarded, but he did so more cautiously. He stopped ignoring traffic signs, and the pranks ceased. It wasn't a perfect transformation, but it was a step in the right direction. The neighborhood, once again, found its balance. The cracks that had appeared in the facade of our peaceful community had been repaired, not by force or punishment, but by understanding, empathy, and a willingness to change. Clara's journey had come full circle. She had gone from being the disruptor to the peacemaker, from the one who caused fear to the one who helped restore trust. Her transformation wasn't just about her. It was a testament to the power of community and the potential for redemption. As I stood on my porch one evening, watching the children play in the street and the neighbors exchange friendly waves, I realized that the story wasn't just about Clara. It was about all of us. It was a reminder that we are all connected, that our actions have consequences, and that true belonging requires a commitment to the well-being of the whole. The neighborhood had been tested, but it had emerged stronger. The peace we now enjoyed was not the naive peace of ignorance, but the hard-earned peace of experience. It was a peace enriched by the lessons we had learned and the bonds we had forged. And as I looked down the street, I saw Clara sitting on her porch, a small smile on her face as she watched the children play. She had found her place in the community, not as an outsider, but as a valued member. Her journey had been difficult, but it had been worth it. The story of her neighborhood was a reminder that change is possible, that even the most entrenched patterns of behavior can be broken, and that the true strength of a community lies in its ability to come together, to forgive, and to grow. The resolution of the story is not just about Clara's redemption, but about the resilience of the community as a whole. It's a testament to the power of empathy, responsibility, and the enduring human capacity for change. The neighborhood, once fractured, had found a new harmony, one that was stronger and more meaningful because it had been tested and proven. And as the sun set on our quiet street, I knew that the lessons we had learned would stay with us, guiding us as we navigated the complexities of life in a shared social space. The story of Clara and our neighborhood was a reminder that, no matter how difficult the journey, there is always hope for a better tomorrow. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.